Hello there, kia ora, and happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you all today. It has been a really fascinating week, and putting together this omnibus has been a really interesting one to look back on. We looked at the breadcrumbs that get laid out before a budget to find out what the government is going to spend money on or not fund and say that they really wanted to but couldn't. And we took a look at the strike that took place this week as well for the Association of Salaried Medical Staff, ASMS, which sounds like an ASMR title, but definitely is not that. It's been a really strange week, particularly because Parliament hasn't been sitting. I guess my lightsaber turned itself off. But it has also been a really informative week for me. A couple of pieces of content that I've done over on my Substack have, well, got a few people talking. Some of them probably don't want me talking about them, but it's been really interesting as we lead into this year's local body election. There'll be a bit more content around local body elections coming out as well as we get closer and closer to the time. And if you want to check that out, though, you can always go and subscribe to the Substack. The link is in my bio or my link tree. There'll be some video content that goes out with it as well, of course. So it's going to be a really interesting one to sit down and see how that evolves, because there's a lot going on there, like Groundswell getting involved and keeping people in the dark about it. Voices for Freedom are actually doing a lot more organising this year to make sure that they've got more people who understand what it is to be on a council this time around. So yeah, there's a lot going on. Anyway, make sure that you enjoy this video, or try to enjoy it. You don't have to make sure, it's not like an order or anything. Feel free to like the video, share the video, or subscribe to the channel. That would be great too. And I will catch you guys at the other end. Hello there, kia ora. Welcome to Budget Breadcrumbs season. With the budget less than a month away, the government is going to spend as much time as possible telling us about the amazing things that they're doing with it this year. It's something every government does, and it's designed to set expectations and let you know that they're going to make life better for all. Terms and conditions may apply. The term better is subjective and results may vary depending on whether or not you donated to an election campaign for the coalition, fell down a conspiracy rabbit hole, or have imported culture war talking points and made them your entire personality. You might have seen this announcement last week from Education Minister Erica Stanford, where teachers will no longer have to pay for their own registration fees. And it's not a bad call in isolation. It should help teachers get into the industry, and for some teachers, especially those new to the field, it could be a handy change that keeps them in the field. But it ignores the fact that the overall funding increase in last year's budget was less than the rate of inflation, which means a cut in spending power. How the government cut travel budgets, contractors, consultants, and professional development programs, including ones in Matauranga Māori cancelled based on made-up claims about it not succeeding, based on success markers that it wasn't measured against. Oh, and part of that increase in spending of $150 million over 4 years went on the failing charter school project, where attendance is so low that the average spend per student is 5 times the amount spent on standard state school students, and only 6 state schools have changed to charter schools. And that's the crux of any budget from any government. It's a sleight of hand trick when it comes to pre-budget announcements. There will be a song and dance about good things, and they'll try and minimize those issues and bad things, like how only 259 families access the maximum amount of Family Start rebates due to what the Prime Minister called issues with assumptions, and not, people falling for the spin pushed by the media in headlines like this from the Waikato Times. And you can expect this at every level of government representation. The mainstream media will focus on the big ticket items and push wide-reaching narratives. And in an environment where the finance minister has already warned us that she's slashing the operation budget by 1/3 of the amount that she gave to landlords and tax cuts, they will want to play the media to control the narrative as much as possible, which means stories like how the government has quietly reduced the number of ICU beds at the downgraded Dunedin Hospital gets released just before the salaried medical staff go on strike, which will wipe the news about the beds off the front page headlines. We'll also see a spin come into play from local MPs as issues around funding cuts start impacting those local communities that they represent. And those communities then ask for answers, and the MPs will tend to deflect. Like Northcote MP Dan Bidios here on the closure of the North Shore Women's Centre due to funding cuts, where he tries to defend the funding cuts. They're closing down after 38 years of services to the community, helping women from all walks of life with a huge range of issues in areas like counselling, legal advice, housing support, and safe spaces for vulnerable women. They get funding from Oranga Tamariki for some of the services that they do, about a third of their funding, because they aren't focused specifically enough on children though, and with the budget cuts to Oranga Tamariki over the past year and expected this year, they're not going to get that funding. Now, for any organisation, a third of their operational budget is going to be a massive blow. But they've also had trouble with funding from other sources because, as the MP says, the economic conditions are tough. You know, those conditions which have seen a rise in inflation, tens of thousands of people made unemployed, skyrocketing numbers of people needing benefits and being forced to stay on those benefits longer, and sanctions added to those benefits at record levels while the country dives into the worst recession since the 90s and the government borrows money to pay for tax cuts, while they also give kickbacks to landlords and tobacco companies and slashing funding to thousands of peripheral services that work for government departments. So clearly not the fault of Dan or his government's finance minister or, this government at all. So over the next month, keep a close eye on the announcements and deflections. It shows what the real priorities are for the coalition, like how they said that they would find the funding for a massive increase in military spending because they have to, while the Defence Force slashes the amount of staff to pay for last year's tax cuts. So what will be cut this year? I honestly don't know, but I am curious to see what you think the government's going to cut funds to and what they're going to say to justify it. Hello there, kia ora. On May 1, more than 5,000 members of the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists are going to be walking off the job for 24 hours in response to what they see as unsatisfactory pay offers in negotiations from Te Whatu Ora. It's a decision that's going to impact just over 4,000 patients who are going to have planned treatment postponed. So what's actually going on here? Well, negotiations have been going on for a while, and the offer that was last taken back to the union saw a general funding increase of between 1 and 1.5%, which is well below that 2.5% rate of inflation that we're all dealing with, which means a real-world decrease in spending power, just like what happened to minimum wage earners. 87% of the union voted that offer down, and on Monday, last-minute negotiations happened again, which weren't even taken back to the union to look at because the negotiating team felt that this offer was worse than before. The latest offer did take on board some feedback from negotiations earlier, including higher starting salaries for junior doctors, but still had the same overall envelope of funding. And because most senior doctors are already in that top current earning tier that doctors go through, the pay rise on offer for them was less than 0.77%, and it didn't include any back pay. And that number of doctors is actually part of the whole mix of issues going on. We simply don't have enough doctors or nurses, and the pay rises wouldn't really entice new doctors and nurses. And it doesn't do much to entice doctors to head to regions really suffering from a lack of medical coverage. In fact, according to the union, the offer itself specifically mentioned only 4 regions, the ones that get the most media coverage, but ignores a number of other regions needing more medical staff. On average, our regions need another 12% more staff. In some areas, that's as high as 44%. Meanwhile, Te Whatu Ora framed this as an incentive to get in hard-to-recruit districts, which will assist in attracting and retaining doctors and nurses. There is, understandably, a lot of back and forwards going on with both parties, and that means a lot of spin as well. The Health Minister, Simeon Brown, that evangelical Christian who refuses to say if abortion is healthcare, well, he's trying to frame this as doctors being selfish. How dare they put patients at risk, while the doctors are pointing out that due to chronic staff shortages and severe underfunding of the health sector, the amount of procedures and specialist appointments that will be impacted are about the same as what are already cancelled due to those shortages in staffing and funding. They also want to reiterate that if you do have an appointment that hasn't been cancelled or postponed, please do show up for it. And at no point has anyone suggested that essential services like emergency care or life-preserving services are going to be removed as part of the strike. But the union has been putting out messaging that the services may be a bit stretched. So please ensure that if you are visiting an ED or need to look at help for urgent care, that it's for actual emergencies and not just because of the lack of funding for primary health service providers and the increased costs in prescription medicine, which means that some people can't afford to access those primary health steps and use ED as an alternative. And all of the issues are exacerbated by a range of other things going on as well, from the installation of a commissioner to the reinstatement of the board, the outdated and regionally siloed IT systems that have needed a massive overhaul for years, but which was put on the back burner, to fund those company tax credits for tobacco companies, along with hiring freezes that they say aren't technically freezes, lower than inflation and population growth funding increases, massive layoffs throughout the sector, and even resources being stretched as part of the initial pandemic response, highlighting gaps in the systems. Hell, even media coverage that focuses on the dysfunction and concerns within the sector. These are all factors to what's currently happening and how the public perceive it. So what's going to happen on May the 1st? Well, there's going to be a reduction in medical staff in hospitals, and on May 2nd, Te Whatu Ora will be counting the cost of that action. They have sought a third-party remediation process, which may happen, or they may come back with a better offer. Either way, though, it shows just how much stress our health sector is under. There simply aren't enough staff to meet the needs of the population. The policies of the current government will increase the pressure on the sector, and the funds don't seem to be being made available to find ways to fill those gaps. Judith Collins did say about the increase in Defence Force spending that the money will be found because it needs to be found. But from those medical professionals striking on May the 1st, well, to them it seems like that outlook isn't being taken when it comes to the health sector. In this bulletin, storm-ravaged parts of the country the highest priority for someone who isn't the Prime Minister. Human rights deemed an optional extra by privileged white people. Human space filler thinks he works too hard. And why inflation is rising before the government tells us who they intend to hurt with this year's budget. All that and more in this week's The News. Hello there, kia ora, I'm Paul, and I really hope this weekend Australians don't make the same mistake we did by voting in a bald, ultra-conservative, right-wing politician. Parts of Canterbury and Wellington are in clean-up mode this weekend after an unprecedented weather event which saw record levels of flooding, houses evacuated and a state of emergency declared. This storm also saw power cuts in the area, red wind warnings in Wellington, all flights out of the capital cancelled and record numbers of emergency services called out. While the Prime Minister, seen here learning that there is a landmass south of the North Island, spent the weather event promoting a ban on voting for prisoners, his visit to a rest home and making it easier for farmers to pollute, while saying nothing about the storm. While Niwa has pointed out that the severity of the weather event was heightened by man-made climate change, leading to more water in the area and higher atmospheric pressure, which the Deputy Prime Minister has deemed as woke, so won't be worrying about the impacted areas, and ACT MP Mark Cameron has said there's no reason for banks to tell us what their climate disclosures are so that they can keep services open for our biggest polluters. The Ministry of Health has announced a decrease in the number of planned ICU beds for the currently under construction downgraded Dunedin Hospital. The updated plan has 10 fewer beds than was originally signed off as part of the government's plans to downsize the initial build. Said Simeon Brown, Minister of Health, seen here learning McDonald's Happy Meals come with a toy. It's not like that many people live in that part of the country anyway. They'll never notice. Chief Human Rights Commissioner Stephen Rainbow, seen here showing how much he cares if he feeds dangerous rhetoric to white nationalist extremists about Muslim communities, is again under fire for comments he made disparaging the Muslim community. Notes from a February meeting have revealed that he claimed that they are a threat to Jewish communities, despite denying that he used that term when the reports initially came out last month. When asked for comment, the Prime Minister said, "Human rights? Not on my watch." The government is rolling out plans to disenfranchise people in prisons, removing their right to vote. Currently, anyone serving more than 3 years is barred from voting, while those serving under 3 years can vote for the ward or electorates that they resided in before incarceration. With plans to increase prison capacity and demands for the judiciary to use prison more as a punishment, with a police force that has an admitted racial bias against Māori and a prison system where Māori are currently overrepresented, the government has denied these changes will unfairly impact Māori, while the High Court has ruled that stopping prisoners who would be released during the tenure of the winners of the elections in question from voting is a breach of their rights, and forcing a blanket ban on voting which doesn't take on board the process of rehabilitation, time spent in prison, the unfairness of someone being able to vote or refuse a vote depending on if they have home detention or not, is a breach of human rights. The Prime Minister has said he just doesn't care about human rights, saying, "Human rights? Not on my watch." But at least this way we can take credit for having stopped former ACT Party President Tim Jago from voting. Finance Minister Nicola Willis has announced the decommissioning of the inter-islander Aratiri later this year, just in time for the replacement ferry ordered by Labour last term to not be delivered because it was cancelled to pay for tax cuts for landlords. The only rail-enabled inter-islander ferry being out of commission means a significant delay will be expected over the next few years for cargo movements between the islands. Said the Finance Minister, "It's not like that many people live in that part of the country anyway. They'll never notice." Education Minister Erica Stanford, seen here showing off her MAGA hat to then US Ambassador Scott Brown in 2018, has announced that from 2027, all children in schools will be taught financial literacy in compulsory classes, set apart from the current financial literacy models and maths courses. Labour's education spokesperson Willow Jean Prime has come out in support, saying, "Of course we support this. Not only will it mean school kids are more qualified with budgets than the English Lit grad who currently has the finance portfolio, this was our policy in 2023, so it's good to see it being adopted." Iwi bosses have accused New Zealand First in active scaremongering and race baiting because they're scaremongering and race baiting, more so than usual, around plans for a joint management oversight organisation that reports back to Auckland Council about the Waitakere Ranges. The plan required under a 2008 law was called co-governance by the two parties, leading to the usual round of idiots who think woke is an insult, crying about something they clearly don't understand. Said Mining Minister Shane Jones, seen here showing you how many meals you have to buy him before he'll change laws to let you achieve what you want. Well, of course we did that. How else can we mobilise enough people to let us strip the area of natural assets and make it think it was their idea? Statistics New Zealand has been forced to amend a recent inflation figure announcement after an issue with their formula that sets the levels based on the Consumer Price Index. It seems Stats NZ forgot to incorporate the increased costs of car registration, and the current inflation rate is actually 2.6%, not the reported 2.5%, marking one of the only times in recorded history where 0.1% of a size difference meant people were more screwed than they believed. The Minister for Regulation in charge of the ministry that this week once again topped the list of highest paid civil servant roles, David Seymour, seen here with a recently disenfranchised voter, has claimed he wants to slash what he calls bloated ministerial lineups, saying there are simply too many portfolios that are unnecessary and meaningless, calling the current setup a big complicated bureaucratic beast. And he should know his Ministry of Regulation is a perfect example of this. The Associate Minister of Education, Finance, Health and Justice says he would like to include all Associate Minister positions except Finance, Child Poverty Reduction, Hospitality, Racing, Auckland, the South Island and Space. Said a spokesperson for the Ministry of Space, Seymour is clearly an expert on the topic. He has so much of it between his ears after all, but after spending so much time on the mining ship Red Dwarf, we're surprised he feels this way about space. Health New Zealand has confirmed that it will cut a third of all IT jobs in an effort to keep paying for tax cuts for landlords and tobacco companies. The current infrastructure for the health sector is heavily siloed and runs on a range of archaic systems, making it more susceptible to foreign interference and bad faith actors willing to exploit the system's weaknesses. Said Minister of Health Simeon Brown, seen here with his boss wondering why there are poor people within a 500 metre radius of their location, "We just wanted to make sure that if the Deputy Prime Minister needed to access a file, he wouldn't feel too much pressure because of the age of the system." The Waitangi Tribunal has agreed to an emergency hearing over the ACT Party's Regulatory Standards Bill, brought to the tribunal by the group behind last year's record-shattering Hikoi Mō Te Tiriti. Over 12,000 people have registered as part of the claimant group, concerned that the bill will breach the founding document and cause significant prejudice to Māori. Said Māori Development Minister Tama Pōtaka, seen here holding a list of what his coalition have done for Māori. "Oh, bugger! We'll need to rush this in front of the House now. It's how we stop the tribunal ruling on other legislation we've done that hold Māori back in the past, since they can't rule on anything that's before the House." Mayors from around the country have asked themselves, what the fuck? At Associate Education Minister David Seymour's latest suggestions that they be the ones to fight truancy in schools. After the government removed well-being considerations from the Local Government Act, Seymour this week asked mayors to step up and help, a move rejected by local authorities as being well outside the remit of local government. Said Christchurch Mayor Phil Major, seen here showing how much of a shit he doesn't give about Seymour's suggestion, "We want to see our students attend schools and get the best possible outcomes, but we don't have the resources or time to do a job that the minister stopped funding. Maybe if he wants to see results, he should stop visiting schools, then attendance might increase." And finally, one of the current iterations of New Zealand Loyal, which last year was taken over by alt-right media personality and big fan of everything Vlad is doing in Russia, Calvin Alp, has been officially debanked. ASB, Kiwibank, NBS, Co-op and SBS have all declined applications for the party to open accounts under rules which prohibit the opening of accounts linked to politicians or political groups that may have been exposed to political interference, susceptible to money laundering or funding terrorism. After thousands went missing from the Liz Gun-controlled accounts of New Zealand Loyal last year, and after Alp himself attended a Russian state event for pro-Russian influencers pushing disinformation worldwide, after the trial that he had for allegedly owning and distributing objectionable video material from the Christchurch massacre, it seems banks just can't find a reason to believe in the legitimacy of those involved in this undertaking. And that is this week's The News. Hey, thanks for checking out this week's Omnibus. Really appreciate it. It has been as I said, fascinating week. Don't forget, if you haven't already, hit that like button on the video, or share the video, or leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, all that kind of stuff. And don't forget, at the moment, or sometime fairly soon, if it's not there, I think it might be about lunchtime, this week's Substack article goes into the post section here on the YouTube page for free, so everyone can sit down and check it out. In there, I show you how to spot some of the red flags that you might spot from candidates in local body elections. There's 3 in there. 3 different sort of red flags and some examples that go around it as well. All right, until next time, look after yourself, live long, prosper. May the 4th be with you today, and I will catch you guys all next time. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.